now
be a part
here
of
is
this
the
press
findings of their
conference. My name is Mark
investigation.
Myers. I'm the mayor of Greenwood. First, I just want to say that my heart continues to grieve for the families of those who lost their loved ones at the Greenwood Park Mall on July 17th. Today, I'm proud to stand here, though, with our law enforcement community. I want to thank all of those different law enforcement agencies that were involved and public safety agencies that came down to help us that tragic evening and that have worked with us since then. You know, we may never have all the answers to what happened that evening and why it happened, but I'm confident that with the professionalism that's been put forward by all of our agencies, that you'll find answers today to some of the questions. Some questions we'll never know, but I'm very proud of our people who have been here, who have worked through this tirelessly. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my police chief, James Eisen.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning. A little over 5 months ago, a senseless act of violence shook our community. On July 17th at approximately 5:56 p.m., 20-year-old Jonathan Sapperman opened fire inside the Greenwood Park Mall food court. He killed 3 innocent people and injured several others. His horrific actions were abruptly ended by Elijah Dicken, a 22-year-old man who was lawfully carrying a handgun. From this point forward, Sapperman will be referred to as the shooter. Over the course of the past 5 months, detectives from the Greenwood Police Department and the FBI have worked diligently to investigate this crime and attempt to determine a motive behind it. Over the next few minutes, I will walk you through these steps of the investigation, what we discovered, and the questions that still remain unanswered. I will begin by discussing the shooter's laptop and cell phone. As you may remember, the laptop was found in the oven at the shooter's apartment. He had also placed a butane tank inside the oven. The butane tank exploded and the laptop was so badly damaged that we were unable to access the files. The shooter's cell phone was located in a toilet in the food court restroom. It was submerged in water. The FBI in Quantico, Virginia was able to dry the cell phone and get it to power up. However, the cell phone was password locked. It is currently at the FBI lab in Quantico, hooked up to software designed to run every possible combination for the 6-digit code. This is very time-consuming because there are approximately 1 million possible combinations. This process is still ongoing and could take years to unlock. It is for this reason that we have not been able to conduct a forensic examination of the cell phone. We have, however, obtained the shooter's cell phone records, including call and text message logs, internet browsing history, and cloud history. Nothing of significance was found in these records. If and when the FBI is able to unlock the cell phone, we will provide an update at that time should there be any substantial evidence retrieved. During the course of this investigation, investigators conducted interviews of the shooter's family members, ex-foster parents, and friends. They also served search warrants to the following social media and technology companies: Facebook, Instagram, 4chan, Reddit, Apple, AT&T, Verizon, Bandwidth.com, TextNow Inc., and Google. Search warrants and subpoenas were also served to the Polo Run apartment complex, Department of Child Services, and all school corporations that the shooter attended. This is what we found. The shooter was born in Columbus, Ohio, where he lived with both parents until they separated when he was 5 years old. His father moved to New York while the shooter and his 2 brothers moved to Florida with their mother. CPS reports indicated that the shooter was at times homeless as a child. There were a total of 12 Child Protective Service reports filed from the time that the shooter was 11 years old until he was 18 years old. These reports range from allegations of abuse, neglect, drug use, and truancy. During this time, the shooter was in and out of foster care 6 times. On October 15, 2018, the shooter's older brother was awarded custody of the shooter. The shooter was 17 years old when he moved into his brother's apartment in the Polo Run apartment complex. The shooter lived in the Polo Run apartment complex from 2018 until July of 2022. During this time, his father was helping him pay the rent and his bills. The shooter quit his job in May of 2022 and had no income. In June of this year, the shooter's brother removed his name from the apartment lease, and the shooter was living in the apartment alone. During the same time frame, the shooter's father cut off all financial assistance and even had the shooter's cell phone turned off. Days prior to the mall incident, the shooter received notification from Polo Run apartment complex that he was being evicted due to lack of payment. As mentioned earlier, search warrants were served to Facebook, Instagram, 4chan, and Reddit, all of which the shooter had accounts with. After diving into the content of the shooter's post, it was determined that he utilized Reddit most often. In fact, from 2017 to 2022, the shooter made over 700 comments on subreddits related to mass killers. We were unable to locate any comments made by the shooter on these subreddits that would indicate he was planning on carrying out such an attack. On the contrary, almost every post was more of a discussion or debate concerning other high-profile mass killings around the country. The shooter acknowledged several times in these comments that he studied and researched mass killings and serial killers. It seemed that he enjoyed debating with others the tactics, motives, and details surrounding these incidents. One of the things that we noticed as we dove into the shooter's digital footprint was his choice of email addresses and usernames for his social media accounts. Some that gave us concern were thedarkwillrise@gmail.com, xxjonathandark@gmail.com, and his Reddit usernames, the Greater German Reich and Grober Germanic. This is a political state name that Nazi Germany tried to establish in World War II. We found nothing linking the shooter to any anti-Semitic beliefs or Nazi idealizations. His family informed us that from a young age, the shooter had a fascination with World War II and Nazi Germany, and that he read and studied on that topic. Several of his subreddit posts referenced the Germans, Nazis, and World War II, however, nothing that would suggest he shared the Nazi ideology. Instead, it seemed that he was touting his knowledge of the subject. Upon checking the FBI's database, agents learned that the FBI office in Baltimore, Maryland, received an anonymous tip online on December 6, 2019. The tipster stated that someone using the name Greater German Reich had been posting on a subreddit for mass killers. The tip stated that the person posting seemed to have a desire to learn about mass killings, to idolize the killers, and to have access to guns. The FBI Baltimore tracked the IP address associated with the post to the Indianapolis area. Baltimore FBI then transferred the tip to the Indianapolis FBI. Further investigation by the Indianapolis FBI revealed that the IP address associated with this particular user was issued to the Polo Run apartment complex. This IP address would be assigned to anyone using the free apartment complex Wi-Fi, which made it increasingly difficult to identify the user. After exhausting all avenues to identify the unsub and lacking any accusations of criminal activity, the investigation was closed on March 30th, 2020. There were no additional complaints or reports made concerning these email addresses, usernames, or the shooter that would have prompted subsequent investigations. Detectives and FBI agents also interviewed family members and friends of the shooter. The names of those interviewed will not be shared today to respect their privacy. However, what they shared that is pertinent to this investigation is as follows. A high school friend of the shooter described him as antisocial. He stated that the shooter was very quiet and never talked about personal issues. He stated that their relationship primarily revolved around smoking marijuana. He informed investigators that the shooter had a strong interest in guns and drugs. He stated that he once joked with the shooter, telling him that he was, quote, the school shooter type. However, the shooter never communicated to him any plans to harm others. Detectives also spoke to the shooter's ex-girlfriend. She stated that she and the shooter broke up about 18 months prior to the incident at the mall. She expressed that it did not surprise her at all that he committed this crime. She described the shooter as a very unhappy person. She stated that he had a fascination with Nazi Germany, firearms, and drugs. She informed investigators that the shooter was abusive towards her on several occasions and once even stuck a gun in her mouth during an argument. She also reported that he once told her, quote, this world is not made for me and I will not live past 20 years old. He also told her that if he ever killed himself, he would take others with him. She stated that the shooter was also racist towards African Americans and Hispanics due to bad experiences that he had with people of those races while he was growing up. None of these incidents were ever reported to police. In closing, there is no clear motive as to why the shooter committed this crime or why he chose the time and place to do it. He did not communicate his intentions via electronic media or directly to anyone. He also did not leave a note or manifesto citing his motivation. Although 3 of the victims were Hispanic, there is no definitive proof that they were targeted due to their race. We do know that all 3 victims were closest in proximity to the shooter when he exited the restroom. Therefore, we are unable to determine if he specifically targeted them due to their race or if they were just more opportunistic or the most opportunistic targets. I would also like to note that the Johnson County prosecutor has reviewed this case and found that Elijah Dicken, that his use of deadly force was lawful under Indiana law. There will be no charges filed against Mr. Dicken for his actions in this incident. And I would like to make it perfectly clear that we consider, and there's no doubt in my mind, that Elijah Dicken saved many, many lives that night, and he is a true hero. At this time, I'd like to introduce the individual standing behind me. To my right, I have Deputy Chief Jay Arnold. He was the lead investigator. He's with the Greenwood Police Department. And Herb Stapleton, the agent in charge of the Indianapolis FBI. At this point, we will answer any questions that you have.
What school districts did the shooter
Attended Greenwood and Columbus, also Center Grove.
Columbus, Ohio?
No, Columbus, Indiana. I believe there was a private academy too.
Have you drawn any conclusions about the time he spent in the bathroom before actually initiating the shooting?
No. It would be speculation, but I will tell you, I think we can say this with a pretty good degree of certainty. We do know from searching his apartment at the Pull Around apartment complex that he disarmed and removed the smoke detectors. That in combination of putting the butane and the laptop in the oven and turning the oven on high before he left, and the amount of time he spent in the bathroom, we tend to believe that he was hoping to create a diversion, a fire to draw public safety officials to the apartment and away from the mall. There is no proof of that, but I think that's the most logical explanation.
By not being able to gain access into his cell phone, what were you hoping to find? What is kind of missing in this investigation by not having that key evidence?
I don't think we anticipate finding much on the cell phone. The cell phone was a newer cell phone. Like I said, we did subpoena his phone records, so we have his call logs, his text logs, internet searches. What we don't have and what we're wanting to get off that cell phone the most are pictures and videos that he may have.
Did he change when his father turned off his cell phone? Did he get a new cell phone twice?
No, I don't believe so. He was using it. He had actually used it while he was in the restroom at the mall. We do know that he searched. He would use free Wi-Fi. That's the only access he could get. But he did search the ex-girlfriend on Instagram prior to exiting the restroom. That was the last search that he made.
Do you know what his last calls, texts? Did he make any calls or texts to anybody?
No. I believe one of the last calls was to his brother the day before, and it was in relation to the apartment and the eviction.
Was there any information that he had ever received any mental health services or counseling?
I don't believe he had received. He did? Okay. I'll let Deputy Chief Arnold stand up.
So when he was in the DCS system, he did seek counseling quite often while he saw the counselors, and from every school district he was there.
Anybody ever race? Did you find anybody ever in notes that raised any red flags about him at all during those counseling sessions?
No.
Is that surprising to you?
No.
Why is
It's not surprising. I mean, they're just going to put in there what they see and what his history is based on, you know, his past and things like that. So they're not going to, if they saw red flags, they would definitely report it to law enforcement. So there was no red flags, there was no reports.
Is it your guys' understanding that 4chan is a site that has posted quite a bit of hate speech and things like that, extremist views and all that?
You know, I'm not a tech person, so I really can't answer that.
Were you able to obtain any GPS or location data from any of the subpoenas you served to see if he had sort of cased the mall in the days or weeks before?
No, he lived less than a mile from the mall, and he'd lived in the Greenwood area for quite a while. So the answer to that is no. Pretty certain he was probably very familiar with the mall.
Is there video inside, from inside the mall, of him entering the mall?
Yes.
Are you going to release that?
No. I don't intend on releasing any of the video out of respect for those killed. It has very graphic images, and I'd like to protect their dignity.
I know you can't say for sure if these people were the closest and targeted, but since he had, or from what his family said, he had racist views towards African Americans and Hispanics, do you think can you draw a reasonable conclusion that these people were possibly targeted for that reason as well?
No, and the reason why is once he entered that restroom, he was in there for an hour, and he never came out. The very first person he approached was Victor Gomez, and Victor was walking into the restroom. He shot Victor Gomez right in the entryway to the restroom. He then immediately turns the firearm to the closest table to him, which was Mr. and Mrs. Pineda. And he also shot beyond them, kind of, I don't know that he was taking aim. He was kind of shooting recklessly before Mr. Dickin responded. But the fact that he would have no idea who was outside of the restroom and where their locations was. The other thing that leads us to believe that they weren't specifically targeted, we did subpoena his ophthalmology records, and he was extremely nearsighted. Matter of fact, I believe the ophthalmologist said that from a distance of 15 feet, he would only be able to see shapes and colors. And the autopsy report, he did not have contact lenses or corrective lenses on.
You mentioned comments from his friend and his ex-girlfriend. What about the family? Did this come as a surprise to them?
Yes, yes. And they did. Deputy Chief Arnold and the FBI agents interviewed family members, and from what I saw of the interviews, video-wise, they were genuinely surprised. They would have, matter of fact, I believe they said they've never seen this coming.
He had most recently lived with his brother. Did his brother have any indications or any concerns about his brother's behaviors or attitudes?
No.
And again, how long then had the shooter been living essentially alone at Polo Run?
I believe 2 years. The brother just took his name off of the lease in June, which was a month before the shooting. But I believe in his statement he said he had moved out approximately 2 years earlier.
Do you know what the reason was for the fallout between the dad cutting him off, the brother cutting him off? Sort of?
Yes, the father just expressed that he was 20 years old, he had quit his job, and it was time for him to take responsibility for himself, get a job, and pay his own bills.
Did you interview personnel at Greenwood Park Mall to go over their security procedures or their policies for watching their surveillance videos actively?
No. No, any question like that would have to be answered by Simon Properties.
Chief, obviously, this took a toll on the community. Where do we go from here?
Well, it absolutely has taken a toll on this community. You know, you never expect something like this. It always happens somewhere else, right? But the fact of the matter is it can happen anywhere. And unfortunately, even, you know, you were talking about the security measures at the mall. There was nothing. I watched the video. He walked into the mall with a backpack on, texting, or looking like he was texting, had his head down. Not one person that he walked by, because I was looking for it, not one person, it caught their attention, or you saw a change in their demeanor. I don't know how you stop that, short of putting metal detectors at every door. Could you imagine, everybody, in every entrance? Sometimes all we can hope for is an Elijah Dickens to be in the right place at the right time.
Have you had a conversation with Mr. Dickens? Can you tell us about his interview with you guys?
Investigators interviewed him right after the incident. He's a 22-year-old man who was at the mall shopping with his girlfriend. They had just stopped at the Asian restaurant, had dinner. I have viewed the video immediately upon the other shoppers, other patrons' responses, the running, getting up, flinching, running to the exits. Elijah, I mean, it was instantaneous. He stood up and he engaged the shooter from a very long distance.
Did you determine that exact distance?
That was 40 yards exactly. And I would like to state, I do believe Mr. Dickens' attorney, Guy Relford, is here. He is not part of this press conference, but he has let me know that he will be available for any questions concerning Elijah after.
I have to wonder, now that you have sort of this sort of full picture of this shooter's life and the things he was searching, his obsessions and mass killings and Nazis and things like that, does any of this surprise you?
Well, once again, I don't want to speculate, but I went through all, I believe, 718 posts myself. The deputy chief went through it. The FBI went through it. There was nothing in there that would lead us to believe that he was racist. Literally, and I'll tell you, I'll give you an example. Most of his posts were just like this one. He would engage in almost debates with other people on these subreddit sites, touting the amount of knowledge he had. And the only thing that I noticed was he would get angry if someone stated something that he felt was inaccurate, but nothing ever to the extent of citing any type of racist comments, anti-Semitic viewpoints, nothing to make comments, nothing to even give accolades to the shooters. It was simply, for example, on December 30th, 2019, he commented on a subreddit post related to mass killers. If you look at the big picture, most shootings have not statistically happened at gun-free zones. Gun-free zones are a recent phenomenon that by definition cause them to be easy targets. Most shooters don't attack designated gun-free zones, but places people don't usually carry guns. For example, Devin Kelly citing a mass killer. I think the question of the mass shooters who purposely didn't target gun-free individuals would be better as it is a bit more scoped. I have researched Sandy Hook for a little over 2 years, and I'm not saying anything researchers like Wade haven't said before. To me, the young man seemed, in reading his post, that he was very well versed on these mass shooting events in the past and also World War II and the Nazis, but never once. As a matter of fact, there was one post that he criticized someone for posting a swastika. As much as he was into it, it really just seems like a fascination and not that he is accepting any type of agreement with it.
But his family said he was racist.
No, ex-girlfriend. Yeah, and once again, we came into this wanting to share everything that we had, but you have to keep in mind that this may or may not be accurate information.
What do you think this says just about this guy, I don't know if I'd classify it or if you would classify it as sort of a lone wolf kind of person, but what do you think this says about the ongoing danger of these types of just decided I'm gonna walk into wherever and kill a bunch of people.
Yeah. I can tell you, it's really hard to stop. When someone makes their mind up that they're going to do something evil like this, it's really hard to stop. So what really needs to happen is that we all as a society have to be more vigilant. If you see something, say something. But the same thing with this. He relayed his intentions to no one. We don't know if this was something he had planned for a long time. There's no indication that it was. We know that he had a fascination with this type of thing. He never posted anything remotely related to wanting to carry out an attack. He didn't communicate it verbally to his family members, and he didn't have many friends. We interviewed the two that he had that we knew of. The bottom line is this was just a young man who had a very troubled upbringing, and I think his world was crashing in around him. And unfortunately, this was the result.
Do you know if he had any plans to survive himself that day?
I will say that I don't believe he had plans to survive. We can confirm there was a 4chan post that was circulating on social media with him in his apartment. We confirmed it was taken about an hour before he went to the mall, where the weapons that he used and the attire that we found him in, with the chest rig and all of that, he had a gun to the back of his head, and I believe the caption was, "Name is Jonathan and it's a good day to die." He also referred to, there was a post that I read in one of the mass killer subreddits in which he said, made a comment about one of the mass killers doing it right. I believe it was the Sandy Hook, by shooting himself in the back of the head.
Where's the investigation? Is it done until we can recover something from the phones, or what happens next?
So it's going to remain active because we haven't been on the phone yet. Like I said, I don't foresee us getting anything substantial off the phone that we haven't in the thousands of pages of documents that we've subpoenaed and already gone through. Really the only thing on that phone that is of real interest is if he had any pictures or videos, or maybe, what we're hoping is maybe he took a video explaining a motive on it. I think that's unlikely, being that he tried to destroy it by putting it in the toilet. So.
Would you be able to release a screen grab of a photo of him walking into the mall?
Yes, we could release that.
The 4chan pictures, I feel like I'm pretty sure I've seen several of them, but was one of them like with all the guns laying on like a carpet?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I believe in the first press conference we gave, that was brought up, and at that time we couldn't confirm that it was him or not. But we did, through the search warrants of 4chan, we did verify that it was him.
What kind of toll has this taken for you guys in the department, and in terms of all the resources that you devoted these last 5 months? What does that look like for you?
Well, I can tell you that our officers, first and foremost, it was very hard on the first responders. We see things that, people are at their worst. We see death, we see automobile accidents, homicides. It's not uncommon as part of our job, but we got to remember the officers are human too. So it had a profound impact on the officers. And as unfortunate as the situation was, one of the things that we do as an agency is do an after-action review to look at what we did right and what our vulnerabilities were, so that we can improve upon it, and it can be used as a training tool around the country. We use the after-action reports from all of these types of incidents, tragedies, to better prepare ourselves for this type of thing. As a matter of fact, tomorrow we will be holding the multi-agency active shooter exercise at the Greenwood High School. It's from 9 to 11 a.m. Our department, Johnson County Sheriff, New Whiteland, Whiteland Schools, Whiteland PD, Bargersville, White River Township Fire, Greenwood Fire, Bargersville Fire, we're all coming together to do a real-to-life drill while this is still fresh in our heads so that we can work on some of the vulnerabilities that we found in the after-action report.
What were some of those?
So the first thing I'd like to say is, I couldn't be prouder of the response. Our response, public safety as a whole, there were, I believe, 15 or 16 police agencies that responded to that. They worked very well together, and it went really well. But let's not forget the trajectory of this incident was changed by Elijah Dickin. It could have been a lot worse, and I'm thankful that it wasn't. So we're thankful that he was there to prevent it from being any worse than it was.
Any idea how many hours, how many police officers were devoted to this case over the course of 5 months?
No, I haven't. We haven't broken that down. It's a lot. Greenwood PD, Deputy Chief Arnold, he's in charge of our investigations division. He was the lead investigator from the time he arrived at the mall that day until we wrap it up. He's put in a lot of hours. All of our investigators, our crime analysts, we've worked very closely with the FBI. The Indianapolis FBI has been fantastic. Matter of fact, we applied for all of the search warrants, and they were a huge help in helping us decipher. Sometimes that comes back in computer jargon, and we sent it to Quantico, and their cyber crimes teams went through it, deciphered it for us, and gave us reports. So we're very grateful for all of the help that the FBI has provided in this.
Agent Stapleton, did the FBI develop any kind of profile on this shooter that may compare to others, or something that you drew any conclusions about this shooter?
No, there's no profile prepared on this particular shooter.
Anything else for Agent Stapleton? We'll take a couple more questions and then we'll wrap it up.
Chief, was there anything you talked a little bit about this, but was there anything in the shooter's background, mental history, crime history, that would have made it harder for him to get a gun, or would have, got the red flag laws involved in stopping him?
No, he had no history as an adult. His juvenile record, we had a few criminal arrests with him. One was for being a runaway juvenile. He brought a knife to school one day. He just got caught with it. So bringing a knife on school property. He got in a fight one day at school, just a fist fight. He was arrested for that, for battery. There was also a possession of paraphernalia encounter that we had with him, but nothing other than the fight at school. Nothing violent. No threats of violence. Most of the government encounter that he had was investigations on his welfare through CPS as he was growing up. A lot of allegations of abuse and neglect.
Do you know if there are any plans for a memorial for the victims? I think York Mayor Harrison answered that.
We actually held a memorial directly after.
Like a more permanent memorial?
Oh, like a site, like yes. I do not know.
We have no plans for that right now.
Chief, is there something, it's Christmas season, people are going to the mall again. How are citizens here supposed to feel safe?
Well, I think we just have to remember that this can happen anywhere. It's like I said, not one person suspected of this young man as he was walking in. Nothing stood out that was going to happen. So I think that we don't change the quality of life that we're accustomed to because people that will do evil are out there. There's always going to be people that will do evil out there. We have to live our lives. We have to you know, we just need to be more vigilant. And sometimes, unfortunately, and this is one of those cases, there were no indicators as he walked into that mall that day that would give anybody any type of alarm or concern or heads up that this was going to happen.
Chief, did
One-
you say that there was a tip traced to an apartment complex before the shooting happened? Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, it was back in 2019. An anonymous tip was given online to the Baltimore FBI that basically just stated that they should look into the person posting with the username Greater German Reich because he seemed to be infatuated with mass killings. There was nothing on there that suggested that he was going to commit. They just wanted him to look at it, and when they completed the investigation, unfortunately, a lot of times your IP address will return. If it's your home, we can figure out who you are. If it's a public IP address and there's really no way to track, I believe there's about 1,400 residents that can use that apartment Wi-Fi. So the FBI did contact us back then and basically asked us if we had anybody on our radar that lives in there that they could help, it would help single someone out to them. We didn't at the time. And, you know, after a while, you just exhaust your resources trying to figure out who this phantom poster is.
Any frustration on your part that you weren't able to process that any further? And is there any solution to that moving forward through change of policy or technologies?
Well, I mean, of course, you know, if we can prevent something, we want to do it. But, I mean, the reality of it is we wouldn't have been able to do anything other than identify who he was because he wasn't saying anything that was illegal or threatening. He was just touting his knowledge. And there's nothing to say that at that time he was even thinking about committing the act that he committed. So unfortunately, there's only one person that has those answers, and it's the shooter. Okay, that's going to conclude our press conference today. I appreciate everyone coming. Thank you very much.
Watching live coverage from Greenwood City Hall in Johnson County. For the last 38 minutes, we've been hearing from the police chief there, Jim Eisen, talking about that shooting on a Sunday night, July 17th at the Greenwood Park Mall, where 3 people died. Of course, we were hoping to learn what was the motive. Why did the shooter do this? Why did he go in there and take 3 lives that night? We didn't get a clear answer on that. We did learn a little bit more about the man who opened fire that day, that 20-year-old Jonathan Sapperman. He was unemployed with a troubled background, a troubled childhood. He walked into that mall Sunday night with a backpack, looking down at his phone. After he went into the mall, he went to the bathroom and he hid there in the food court, and then he emerged about an hour and a half later, minutes before the mall closed, and fired off 24 rounds. There were 3 victims. They all died by multiple gunshot wounds. 56-year-old Pedro Pineda, his wife, 37-year-old Rosa. There was another victim in the case, 30-year-old Victor Gomez. There was an armed bystander, Elijah Dicken, and he was able to fire off 10 rounds 15 seconds after that shooting started. 8 of those bullets hit the assailant. That shooter, Elijah Dicken, is represented by attorney Guy Relford, who is at the podium now and speaking and answering questions. Let's go back there.
You've had several conversations with him about what happened that day. Could you kind of walk us through the conversations you've had with him?
Yeah, I mean, obviously a lot of what I talk to Eli is going to be attorney-client privilege, but Eli's authorized me to talk generally about the events of that day and what's happened since. I mean, you know, again, this is an all-American, hardworking, I always want to call him a kid, but he's 22 years old, who simply wanted to have a meal with his girlfriend at the mall. They actually came to Greenwood from the Columbus area because there's a particular smoothie in the area that he was after and wanted to come have a smoothie, and they decided to go grab dinner at the mall. And when the circumstances unfolded as they did, his first thought was simply, I need to protect people. I need to stop this person from killing people. And as the chief has reported, within 15 seconds, engaged the the shooter and was able to neutralize that threat starting from a distance. I lasered it. I'm a competitive shooter myself and have been active for a long time. I went to the mall and used a laser rangefinder, and I came up with 42 yards. The chief said 43 today, and engaged the threat from that distance and made hits, 8 out of 10. And again, what was incredible to me in him taking me through those events is how he was so level-headed and was able to exhibit that kind of marksmanship under incredibly trying circumstances. We use the term too often, cool under fire. He was literally cool under fire, and so that's why the chief appropriately calls him a hero. Since then, I can tell you that his motivation really is just to get back to his life. He's a hardworking guy, and he doesn't want to be in the public eye. He doesn't want to make public comments. He wants his life back, and he's still. And again, I won't violate his privacy, but I can tell you I've now represented a number of people, half a dozen, who have taken a human life, and every one of them was fully justified and legal, and saved lives in every instance. But for every single one of them, it's a traumatic experience to know that you've taken a human life. And I will talk generally, that's a hard thing to recover from, even when you know you were heroic, and even when you know you saved lives, and even when you are getting the thanks.
So that's Guy Relford, the attorney representing the armed bystander Eli Dicken, who fired off shots and was able to
granddaughter was in the mall. My grandkids
bring an end to the situation at the Greenwood Park Mall on that Sunday night back in July. We have been bringing you live coverage here for the last 42 minutes on 13 News. Our news coverage will continue coming up at noon. So we're going to leave it here for now. I'm Anne Marie Tiernan. We'll be back with a recap of the highlights from that presser in Greenwood today in just about 20 minutes from now.